Yoshi P, I thank you for the gifts that you have given Scholar, because my main, since the good old days of Eld a decade ago, the Scholar has got the most badass skills that I have ever seen on a healer in any game, and they feel even better to actually use. Like, holy fudge balls, this looks and feels incredible. Also, how to say it? I think they heard my feedback and slammed the pieces of feedback together into a skill called Baneful Impactment. But hello, my friends. Have you heard the good word of Seraphism? Because I saw the trailer and I was so scared that I'd be yossified into a small girl angel character, and I was like, oh no, please no, and immediately leapt to see it in game when I was at the media tour. You're right, I'm talking about this absolutely busted, broken, out of this world skill first, because this does a lot and adds a ton of dimension and depth to the Scholar. This is like the Swiss Army knife of skills. Like, this one button does so much. And I'm not even just talking about the skill on it. Like, the impacts of the text on that skill is far-reaching. First thing is that this is a totally separate skill from Dissipation. Also, to be very clear, Dissipation and Seraphism do not overlap and cannot be used at the same time, but initially even I thought Seraphism was just a Dissipation upgrade, but given its separate nature, I'm now viewing Scholar as following like multiple different separate life cycles. Like, for Summoner, you go through Ifrit to Garuda to Titan life cycles, and this is a very on-rails experience for the Summoner, where you're going to cycle through them and you know exactly what you're getting. But for Scholar, now I'm seeing Dissipation as being its own phase with its own purpose in the life cycle. And yes, that include, hey, it's the burst window with potions, let's spam even more Aether flows into energy drains into that target just for potency, like obviously damage, or simply just to make a dummy thick, CRITLO barrier even thicker, because you know I like them thick. And then we have like a general fairy phase where we have things like Fey Blessing, or like the Fairy Tether, or like just the general fairy just spamming, where it's pretty good. And then from there, we have the Summon Seraph phase, where Seraph is obviously doing significantly more like healing output than the fairy. And then you get the Consolation, which is just very good for like HP janitor work, like she will put like a Seraphic Veil on target I'm not even thinking about, then Consolation for multi-hit resolution. Really good split between barriers and heal, whereas like something like Sage's Panheim is just shield. It's just very good cooldown. I think Seraph is very, very much underrated by some people. I think that it is just as good as Panheim. I love it so much. And now we have this like fourth phase in this life cycle of like Scholar healing, which is this fancy new Seraphism transformation phase, which I think may incredibly impact something like double barrier healer compositions, which double barrier healer is obviously really, really freaking strong, but like the options that you get with Seraphism in that kind of composition is just like so deep. First off, Seraphism is also a 3-minute cooldown, just like Dissipation, and it's going to last 20 seconds. It applies on its own when cast an off GCD regen of a humble 100 potency per tick. Given its duration is 20 seconds and 100 potency heal and server intervals are roughly 3 seconds per tick, we're getting at least 600 potency if I floor the math, but maybe 700 if lucky. It is kind of in the favor of 700, but you get what I'm getting at here. This regen effect in and of itself means that this button should never just be a dead button on your bar. No excuses, this should be used often, even in dungeon trash pulls, just for this regen. Like, I'm going to compare the regen now to the Astrologian Celestial Opposition, which is a workhorse of the Astrologian for AoE heals, where Astros does 200 upfront potency and then 100 regen potency over 15 seconds, so 500 over time healing, and that is going to sum up to 700 potency of healing. So even just that is good, and justification to press the button pretty consistently. But Seraphism is also going to lower the cooldown of Emergency Tactics to 1 second, and Emergency Tactics is the off GCD skill that converts the next instance of the shield that you apply to target into healing. Baseline, it's going to be 15 seconds cooldown, and it's great, especially if solo healing or you're getting chatted by your co-healer, because multiple sucker shields don't stack. Why this is interesting is that if you're ever in the situation where you need to dump out a significant amount of pure healing and barriers all at once, because again, you don't need Emergency Tactics, and you can like to be pressed each time you use it, obviously, so you can apply a barrier on top and then top up the HP bar of the people underneath that barrier, or say that there are multiple stages of incredibly heavy hits, so you can heal people under your barrier, or even if you don't need a barrier, just keep pumping out the heals and get everyone to full multiple times in a row. That is definitely an option if it's not going to like outright demand a barrier or you wipe. And to be clear, usually you would hope the pure healer would help, but Optimus Prime from Transformers called and said get real. The next effect is that our barrier skills add low and sucker, which Concitation is just upgraded sucker, and add low and sucker are just changed to the skills manifestation and accession. First thing you're going to notice is that both of them, manifestation and accession, are instant casts, which means that you can run around the entire arena and cast these over and over again. I know Sage players take this for granted, but us poor cast time rooted scholars, this is the first thing that I noticed when I was actually using them. Now let's talk about the healing component, because this is something not as explicitly stated in the tooltip of Seraphism, but manifestation has a baseline cure potency of 360, and then it's galvanized. The basic shield from it is 180, and then critical heals with manifestation also apply a 180% catalyzed barrier, so very similar to Adlo. But when we look at Adlo, it is the same effect, but Adlo is 300 cure potency, and so we are looking at manifestation basically being an instant cast Adlo with a 20% heal boost. Accession is 240 cure potency AoE barrier that puts up a barrier equal to 180% of the HP restored. Baseline sucker, or rather I should get into the habit of calling it Concitation now, because Concitation's the upgraded sucker. I know, a lot of different names, but basically think about it as sucker. But baseline Concitation, aka sucker, is now 200 healing potency at level 100 in Dawntrail. And so we are looking at a session being 240, and so that's a 20% heal boost baked into that as well. And so if we run some basic numbers, Adlo at 300 potency should give us a barrier of 540. Manifestation at 360 potency should give us a barrier on top of that of 648. Sucker at 200 potency will give us a barrier of 360 potency, and Accession at 240 potency will give us a barrier of 432 potency. So with great irony, we are seeing Dissipation's 20% on GCD heal boost baked into Seraphism without it being more stated more directly in Seraphism's tooltip itself. Now, if we want to be funny, we could say Seraphism with the boosted CRITLO barriers could help us with recitation deployment tactics for a bigger CRITLO barrier, and I see that as being totally, possibly, most likely a thing, especially given Dissipation and Seraphism are both separate, and again, totally separate, can't be stacked, 180 second cooldowns. And it would be significantly easier to, say, combine Seraphism with Seraphs. Seraphism is going to give you that on GCD bigger barrier, and then with Seraph's Constellation barrier, which would be another 250 potency barrier on top of whatever monstrosity you conjure up with your own deployment tactics barrier. Like, we throw in Fey Illumination, Protraction, how we might have a Bard add on to that. Oh, the Warrior used... What monstrosity you conjure up, we're going to throw on another 250 with Seraph's Constellation. Basically, we have oodles of tools now to boost our healing, and obviously deployment tactics 90-second cooldown, recitation 90-second cooldown in alignment with that. We're gonna have a lot of big ass barriers now. We have a lot of options with this. Now let's combine the effects that now Scholar has significantly increased healing output, can convert shields into pure healing non-stop because emergency tactics cooldown is 1 second. It has an AoE healing regen bathing the party by default, and the Scholar is fully mobile, and doing so doesn't sacrifice access to any of the fairy skills. It's actually kind of wild to even just theorycraft and imagine the throughput a Scholar can now do in a pinch with this, dumping so much healing. It's kind of absurd. But, and it's a massive Nicki Minaj sized one, this manifestation and accession stuff is all on the global cooldown, and this definitely does dampen down its strength, because if you view Sage's similar skill, well, undeniably it cannot reach the same mind-blowingly stupid levels of output as Seraphism, which raises the question of where would we need this? Obviously, it is a good question to ask, but the Sage does not need to lower their damage where they are normally spamming on the GCD casts of doses to get damage value out of it. But now Seraphism, while it is excessively, extremely powerful if you need that, I can see this skill being useful and even opening up a little bit more flexibility in double barrier healer compositions for sure. But why I see Seraphism as a highly flexible skill, that it kind of is really what you make use out of it, or rather what you want to do at any given moment. Because, and I think that is a healthy healer paradigm, if I'm honest, to have a tool capable of so much depending on what you want to be in a particular situation. On one hand, you can have no commitment, press it every 180 seconds between dungeon trash pulls just for a regen for the party of 700 potency. Okay. Or option 2 is use it to make even bigger deployed barriers and toss it into the pile of recitation, protraction, fey, illumination for all of the heal boosts, minus dissipation, of course, because that doesn't stack. Option 3 is to use it for mobile shields while on the fly and just as a mobility tool. Option 4 is to blast out so much pure healing that it makes even white mage jealous, weaving in emergency tactics and blast out crazy amounts of healing. And there are definitely even more situations than that, and to me that's really healthy to have a range of options here, and that's something that we really don't see with a lot of skills, is this like interplay and like kind of like flexibility, and to me that's healthy to have that range of options there. That gives me something to like kind of toy with, and I think that makes that skill even more useful. Now the next scholar change, moving on from Seraphism, I swear is the fusion of my complaints from before. So if you've ever come across my scholar videos, I had 2 complaints. Firstly, why don't we have another damage over time effect, at least one other one, especially coming from old scholar. It's been kind of quite sad seeing only biolysis. So secondly, my utter unhappiness as why does Chain Stratagem not interact with any other part of the scholar's total toolkit? Like, if you're honest, Chain Stratagem has always been fire and forget, no energy drain, no interaction or anything, and so it always felt kind of, it just kind of felt lame. Like, especially when you consider how streamlined Scholar's damage kit has become over the years, which it used to be quite more substantial to say the least. It really was very disappointing to just say, oh, it's a fire and forget, which would be more okay to like accept if it was like you had like a different rotation going on in there. Like, I don't feel that Battle Litany is like quite the like showcase in Dragoon's kit. How to say it? It's obviously a powerful skill, don't get me wrong, but like Dragoon has other things in rotation, other OGCDs to go in there, whereas Scholar's like, I do broil, biolysis, if I'm feeling zesty energy drain, and Chain Stratagem. If you get what I mean. We just need more. And so now Chain Stratagem combos into the new damage over time skill, Baneful Impactment, which simply put is a skill that you press off of the global cooldown and have the second damage over time effect buffed through the roof with party buffs. And I should say, in no world would I recommend you wait 30 seconds to use the buff. You want to use that active with the Chain Stratagem buff rolling on that target, but this is likely just 30 seconds just in case people forget for some reason, for some leeway for them. So now this gets into the reality of, does this massively shake up the Scholar's damage rotation? And the answer is no. But I will say that at least it does add something to the Scholar's kit. Like, yes, it's one off GCD cast every 2 minutes, and yes, I do wish it was more, but I at least can see that the developers are trying to add more, and I absolutely definitely appreciate it, and I'm happy to see it, and I hope in the future when they're considering, hey, could Scholar have a bit more, I'm going to definitely hope that they pursue this direction. I think that this is a great step forward. Now, will this change the theoretical Scholar's Dissipation opener, where we like Dissipation for Aetherflow 3 energy drains, I mean Aetherflow 3 energy drains, Dissipation for 3 more energy drains? Ha, no. But I for one am happy to see, yay, another damage over time effect, thank God, and yay, Chain Stratagem has an interaction. Now, what are my total thoughts on Scholar going into Dawntrail, which I know a lot of people want to know because I'm kind of like a Scholar main. Seraphism is probably the most interesting healer capstone skill by a few million miles in my opinion. It's not a clear cut and dry skill, and it has a lot of nuance, and to say that I appreciate that kind of thing in this game is an understatement. I really love that, and I want to see more like this. Make me think. Make a skill that has like a Swiss Army knife of different things, and that would be this skill. Baneful Impactment addresses 2 of my biggest issues with the Scholar's kit, and although I do wish that it was on a shorter cooldown than 2 minutes, it is a good direction, and I'm going to be happy for that. Now, if I'm going to be painfully direct, Scholar is incomparably, by no stretch of the imagination, the most interesting healer for myself personally going into Dawntrail. I feel like last expansion with Expedient, that the developers gave Scholar very interesting mechanic, like a speed buff in this game. Like, what? What is that? It was just totally out of the box, and I'm seeing the developers give Scholar very interesting mechanics that break the mold, and I'm pleased to see that continue here. I mean, is seeing Sucker like advance into Consultation, like the biggest change, no. But like the rest of it, I'm really happy with that. But let me know what you guys think down below. For me personally, I have been giddy hyped up ever since I tried it in the media tour, and it has been hard to not scream about how cool it is. And so, enjoy. I'm hyped, bro. I actually really am. Like, truly. I'm Scholar main for sure.